Meanwhile, the Harris campaign is over, but there's still some bills left to be paid. The campaign of Harris-Walz raised over $1 billion, but somehow, despite, I believe, having $160 million still in the bank on October 20th, ends the campaign $20 million in debt. Now, how did they spend that money? There's a lot of different ways you go about spending $1 billion. But the one that stuck out to me, guys, is, of course, she did the interview with the Call Her Daddy podcast. This was a podcast that stopped and started several times in terms of scheduled, then delayed, then scheduled, then delayed. Ultimately, it ended up happening, I think, in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure where they ended up doing it.
At a hotel in Washington, D.C.
So they had to recreate the Call Her Daddy podcast, which the campaign paid for. Recreate the set, $100,000 for that set right there.
They recreated the set?
Because Kamala didn't want to go to L.A. I guess it's filmed out of L.A. or shot out of L.A. So she didn't want to go there, and she said, we want to do it here. But we want it, again, in line with the inauthenticity of the campaign. She said, let's make it look like I went all the way to L.A. It'll cost $100,000. Thank you, donors.
The guest would pay for that. When I saw this, I'm like, well, the show pays for their own recreation of their own set, right? Like, we would do that. I mean, if I went somewhere, for example, to interview The Rock, when I did that, who do you think paid for the cameras and the set? You know what I mean? Not The Rock.
Yeah.
He didn't pay for the set.
Yeah, but if you
Kamala Harris paid for the set. I don't know.
But it's other people's money. It's donors' money, and they just go.
You've got $1 billion.
Look at that really quickly. $100,000.
Yeah,
why did it cost so much?
Yeah, that's true. It looks like it all came from IKEA.
Right.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about Kamala Harris and her campaign currently getting roasted for being over $20 million in debt, despite raising over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. And now she is $20 million in debt. And what does she have to show for it? Well, she has a blowout loss to former President Trump to show for it, okay? And this is so embarrassing that even President Trump is roasting Kamala Harris as he is offering to pay for her campaign debt, okay? And I hope he's not serious about this. I think he's just saying this to troll. But let's read this. He put this out. He says, I am very surprised that the Democrats, who fought a hard and valiant fight in the 2020 presidential election, I'm not sure if he meant 2024, right? He says 2020, but maybe he meant 2024. Raising a record amount of money, didn't have lots of money left over. Now they are being squeezed by vendors and others. Whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we as a party, and for the sake of desperately needed unity, do. We have a lot of money left over, and that our biggest asset in the campaign was, quote, earned media, and that doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. Okay, so here's the thing, right? I think Trump means a couple things by earned media. One, the podcast that he did that basically earned him over millions and millions and millions of views, probably hundreds of millions of views, to be honest with you, that I don't think really cost him all that much. And also on top of that, the earned media from the deranged liberal media that decided to cover Trump 24/7. And I actually think that helped Trump out because it kept Trump in the news. And I think a lot of people saw through the gaslighting of the media, right? And I definitely think that helped Trump out. But this story right here is hilarious to me for multiple reasons. Because first and foremost, it's like, how do you spend $1 billion and end up in debt, right? You spent over $1 billion and you ended up in debt. Like, that's insane, right? And this wasn't over, 9, 10, 11, 12 months. No, it was over 3 months, okay? $1 billion. And she still lost in a landslide. And it's even more hilarious when you hear some of the stories about what she spent money on, okay? Outside of just the Hollywood celebrities whom all probably got paid to give people free concerts that did not move the needle at all. But apparently she was blowing money on things like, for example, the Call Her Daddy podcast, in which they paid over $100,000 to recreate the studio in Kamala's location instead of her flying out to LA to do the podcast, right? And that podcast didn't even get, 1 million views? It might have got 1 million views, right? But it's just a very silly decision to make considering how she had the opportunity to go on Joe Rogan's podcast, in which all she had to do is just fly out there, and she probably could have done an interview and got maybe 10, 20, 30 million views, just like JD Vance and Trump. But she decided not to, but instead she thought that spending $100,000 to recreate a studio for the Call Her Daddy podcast was a much better use of money and time than doing an interview with Joe Rogan. Again, it was so stupid that even Joe Rogan is roasting Kamala Harris right now over her decision not to do the podcast because apparently Kamala Harris's team wanted Joe Rogan to edit the interview. Take a look.
This is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Kamala Harris. I'm like, I bet there's a person in there. I bet I can get to that person.
Yeah.
I wanted to find that person. I don't want to hear all the speeches. I don't want to hear, I was raised middle class. I don't want to hear any of that shit.
She's a roller skater. You know that?
No, I would love to find that out.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to her about all kinds of shit. I literally said, like, because there was a few restrictions of things they didn't want to talk about. But I said, I don't give a fuck. I go, get her in here. Like, whatever you want to talk about. And they want to know if I edit. I'm like, there's not going to be any editing. There's no editing.
Yeah.
We're not going to edit. But
yeah, that's the same thing they asked
just-
us. Is there an edit? You know?
I just wanted to talk. I feel like you give someone a couple of hours and you start talking about anything. I'm going to see the pattern of the way you think. I'm going to see the way you process ideas. I'm going to see whether or not you're calculated or whether you're just free.
Yeah.
Or are you comfortable with you, or are you projecting things? Like, she's got 80 different accents. How do you decide which one to pull out?
Yeah.
Like, she's got
Yeah.
she busts out different accents depending on who she's talking to.
Yeah,
They should
I
have
do
made her
that
talk
too,
to a
though.
bunch of Chinese folks. I would have loved to hear that accent. I want to see what
I do that too, though. I like to meet people where they're at.
Sure.
You know? Oh, if I see somebody that's, I'll be like, what's happening, my friend? It's like, I like to meet people where they are,
Yeah, she did one with the Latinos where she talked with a Latino accent. I'm like, this is wild. But she's a chameleon.
Yeah, hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Okay, I think the Democrats are going to look back at Kamala Harris's campaign, and it is going to be a roadmap of what not to do, right? How to not blow $1 billion on a campaign just to lose in a landslide. And by the way, this is how our government spends our money, guys, right? The same way that Kamala Harris spent that money recklessly in order to get a negative return on investment, which is hilarious because Kamala Harris kept talking about ROI during the campaign trail and how, no, it doesn't matter how much money the government spends. That's not the question we should really be asking. What we really should be asking about is return on investment. Well, it turns out her campaign really didn't understand that, right? They really didn't understand ROI because she got a negative ROI on her campaign spending, okay? And this basically is how the government spends money, right? They just blow money on random things and they don't really consider whether or not this actually really makes sense, okay? And the things that Kamala Harris didn't really make sense. In fact, her campaign didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that these people thought that they were winning, okay? And this is why Miss Lindy Lee, who is a Kamala Harris surrogate, this is why she's now going to the media and roasting Kamala Harris for her failing campaign. She's basically spilling the beans and saying, listen, I was misled. I was hoodwinked, tricked, run amok, led astray by the gaslighting of the Kamala Harris campaign. And this is just hilarious to listen to, how now all these people are coming out and basically exposing the Kamala Harris campaign and how incompetent they were. So without further ado, let's get into this.
The case against Donald Trump. And if you truly believe that Trump is an existential threat, and that's what Democrats have been saying for the past couple of years, then you should have had that process instead of just coronating somebody.
What is the relationship? What has been the relationship throughout the campaign, and what do you think the relationship is today between Biden world and Kamala Harris world?
Well, I have friends, in both worlds, and let me tell you, the relationship was terrible even before the campaign. There was backstabbing. They wanted to hand her the most, least favorable agenda, the legislative priorities. She was stuck with immigration, civil rights, like none of that went
Before she
anywhere.
was even a candidate,
exactly.
you're saying,
And
as vice president.
There was a lot of backstabbing we saw in the press. People were leaking stuff all the time. The White House leaking like a sieve when it came to Kamala Harris. And finally, in the final year, she was able to stabilize and stop the bleeding of her staff because there was a lot of turnover as well. And we saw the press reports about that. And things have finally started to calm down. And I actually think President Biden, the whole endorsing her 30 minutes after he dropped out, I think that was a big FU to the party. You don't want me, here's somebody that you may not like.
You know what's hilarious about this? Is that this woman's an insider. An insider, okay? And she said the exact same things that I was saying for years about how Democrats didn't really want Kamala Harris. They did not think that she was good. Her and Joe Biden were not really getting along like that, okay? And this is why I said that, hey, it was kind of weird that all of a sudden Democrats now were lining up behind Kamala Harris as if she was Obama, right? Because they did not like her just a year ago. Okay, they could not come out and give a full-throated endorsement for her to continue to be vice president. There were talks about her being replaced with Pete Buttigieg, right? This is what they were talking about, okay, out loud, openly. And also on top of that, when Joe Biden came out and endorsed Kamala Harris after dropping out of the race, I also said, yeah, that's a stab in the back at the Democrats who basically forced Joe Biden out, because Joe Biden knew and everybody knew that she couldn't win, right? Everybody knew it, okay? And Joe Biden doing that basically guaranteed there could not be an open DNC convention without there being chaos, because that's exactly what was going to happen if the Democrats had skipped over Kamala Harris. The pro-blackity blacks would have revolted against the Democrat Party and said, no, you can't skip over a black woman like this. This is what they would have said. Okay, now you got Nancy Pelosi coming out giving an interview to the New York Times, which I'm going to cover tomorrow, in which she basically is now saying that, hey, Joe Biden is the problem, right? He is the reason why we lost, okay? They're basically trying to throw Joe Biden on the bus after essentially claiming that he should be on Mount Rushmore. So we're going to talk more about that one tomorrow. But for right now, again, you have surrogates for the Kamala campaign coming out and stabbing her in the back, right? Basically talking about how dysfunctional the party is at this point in time.
But deal with it, you know?
Suggesting that he's sticking the party with Kamala
Kind of like
Harris.
sticking it to the man.
Yeah, but okay, help me understand your perspective on that, because you worked for Kamala Harris.
I didn't. I'm a donor.
You're a donor.
Technically, I mean, you know, I'm not on anyone's payroll. I'm not beholden to anyone. That's why I'm here telling the truth. I'm not here to gaslight anybody. This is just the truth.
And what is the truth?
The truth is this is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster. Actually, it was $1.018 billion, I think, right? There were 20 million or $18 million in debt.
Right.
It's incredible. And I raised millions of that. I have friends that I have to be accountable to and to explain what happened, because I told them it was a margin of error race. I was promised, Jen O'Malley Dillon promised all of us that Harris would win. She even put videos out saying that Harris would win. I believed her. My donors believed her. And so they wrote massive checks. I feel like a lot of us were misled. And even on the night of election night, Will, I looked somebody in the eye and I said, are we going to do this? Are we going to pull it off? She told me yes. And I asked somebody else, like, how are you feeling? He's like, we're going to win Iowa. And I was like, what?
Do you think did they believe this going in? Was there a real sense of false confidence on the side of Kamala Harris, or did they know they were in store for disaster?
You know, I was wondering about that. I was like, I asked them, are you privy to internal numbers that I am not seeing? Because I study this so carefully, and I just wasn't seeing any basis for that level of confidence. And I also want to remind our viewers that, you know, the Trump campaign was touting all of these incredible empirical data weeks before election night. What Harris is touting was the door knocking. She didn't say anything really about early voting. And now I know it's because there was nothing much to say.
So again, if you studied this and you knew that what they were saying didn't make sense, why the hell did you raise millions of dollars on their behalf? So, you know, me personally, I only can feel so bad for this individual. I appreciate her coming out and spilling the beans, but let's be real here. You're an idiot, right? You're an idiot. Because even somebody like myself, I'm not an insider. And I told you guys, I was like, yeah, this just doesn't make sense. Okay, the polls don't make sense. And now we know kind of why the polls were rigged the way they were rigged. They were rigged because not only did they want the American people to believe that Kamala could win, but they wanted the donors to believe that Kamala could win, right? So what you have happening here is a huge scam, right? A $1 billion scam. That is what Kamala Harris's campaign was. It was a $1 billion scam. They scammed donors out of their money. They scammed the American people out of their money with this idea that Kamala Harris could beat Trump. When this woman was a complete and total disaster when she ran for president back in 2019. Like, who in the hell thought that she could excite the Democrat Party in 2024 when she was so bad in 2019 that she had to drop out before a vote was cast? It just never made sense. It never made sense. So, you know, again, if somebody like me could see that, I don't understand why an individual like this person right here couldn't see that. How'd you let yourself get fooled? I don't get it.
I asked you what the relationship was between Biden world and Kamala Harris world, and you told me it was bad. He was bad predating the campaign. Where does Obama world fit in this? You know, there's I don't want to break the Democratic Party into these, three fiefdoms, because there's probably more. Nancy Pelosi is a huge power player, but Barack Obama, the Obama world, is a huge player. How do they fit in the tension or the happiness of Democrats?
That's a really good question. I want to point out that they waited 3 days. Michelle and Barack Obama waited 3 days to endorse Kamala Harris. It was a silence heard around the world. And prior to Biden's endorsement that no one really anticipated, they were vetting people like Mark Kelly. Kamala Harris wasn't at the top of the ticket. So Biden's endorsement of Harris caught a lot of people off guard, even the chieftains of the party. I really think it was a big It was a big F you to everyone. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I think I'm getting a vivid picture.
I didn't finish the word.
Specifically when it comes to why, or the effect, and perhaps the plan on when Joe Biden endorsed Kamala Harris. Really interesting insight.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, $1 billion disaster from a woman that worked at the DNC, somebody that helped raise money on behalf of Kamala Harris. She says, yeah, I felt like I was scammed. I was hoodwinked. I was led astray. Democrats were gaslighting me. Well, surprise, surprise, they were gaslighting the country, right? They've been gaslighting the country for the past 4 years. How the hell did you not see that? Why would you think they would be telling you the truth? They all knew that Kamala Harris was losing to Trump, right? They all knew that she had absolutely no chance whatsoever. They knew this a year ago. This is why they didn't want her to be vice president, and they knew when she took over for Joe Biden that she couldn't win, okay? But hey, they had to try something to beat Trump. Because apparently Joe Biden had zero chances of beating Trump. And again, we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But yeah, essentially everybody's spilling the beans, right? The Democrats are spilling the beans. The Democrat civil war is in full swing right now, and I am enjoying it. I am enjoying this party currently imploding before our eyes. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.